At the time, I met my current partner. We decided to work together to try and kind of help these Russian fighters, Kazakh fighters from this region, help them to go to the Western market, get them signed to UFC, other organizations. When Petr became free agent, he was the first guy we signed together to UFC. Later went on to become a champion. So this was one of the milestones, obviously.
Okay, so Fruiting Body Podcast, we're doing something different now. Every episode we film, we're going to cut it into two parts, airing on Tuesday at 6 p.m. and Thursday at 6 p.m. So this is part one. Enjoy. Okay, welcome to Fruiting Body Podcast. We are a medicinal mushroom company located on the island of Phuket, Thailand. And today we have an absolute legend of a guest. This is Sayat Abdrakhmanov. Yeah. I knew I was going to struggle with that, but we only do one take. Yeah. So we're going to learn about Sayat's story. He is a MMA, UFC, one championship manager. He has been managing some very well-known names such as Petr Yan, Rafael Fiziev, and an up-and-coming superstar, Shavkat Rakhmonov. Okay, I knew I was going to struggle with those names. It's not so simple. We're going to learn all about his story, what brought him to Phuket, specifically what he's doing here and what's next for him, and kind of what's going on in that whole fight world. Because a lot of those fighters, they are up and coming, and obviously guys such as Petr Yan have already won those belts, and let's see what's going on there. So without further ado, let's get this started. Okay, Sayat, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's I guess it's a bit of a long drive up here from Chalong, but at least it's a gorgeous day. It's been a bit of a weird rainy season as well.
It's good, which I like.
Yeah, I saw you were up here maybe a week ago or so, just around the Bang Tao Muay Thai gym and I guess just saying hello and seeing what's going on. What were you doing up here at that time?
I was helping actually UFC crew with the translations. They were filming a countdown show for Zhang Weili. And they were looking for a translator, and obviously I was a obvious choice. So yeah, for a couple of days we filmed there. I helped them. So this is a crew from Russia, and the UFC usually use them for all the countdowns they do in Russia, in Europe, in Thailand. So they've been filming Petr for like 3-4 times already, and this is the second time they came to Phuket, and Zhang was here, so they filmed her too.
Yeah, I saw you guys. I was just training in the HIT class, and I'm like, okay, that's not the typical social media crew, just because of the equipment they had going. And then I think you guys might have went down to Banana Beach that day.
Yeah, Banana Beach. And actually, we weren't allowed to film there. You know, they say it's like a part of the national park.
Oh, really?
You need to have a permission to film there. So they like quickly grabbed the shots and then we left.
Yeah, probably. Maybe for like the drone footage, or especially if you look like a camera crew.
Well, you saw the crew.
Yeah, I mean,
like
it was
10
big.
people, big cameras, you know. And
yeah, I mean, and at Banana Beach. Now, especially when you're getting in there, did you go, unless you live on the island, you wouldn't know. There's that like lower spot entrance, but everybody that's a tourist, they always come up from the top, kind of come down that hill. Yeah, it's
a lower spot.
Yeah. Okay, so like on the Fruiting Body Podcast, we kind of want to understand your story, and specifically, like, how did you get into being an MMA manager? But let's take it even back a step further. Tell us about young Sayat in Kazakhstan. What was it like growing up? Well, a little bit more about your childhood and what led you into what you're doing today.
So I was born in the west part of Kazakhstan, right nearby Caspian Sea, in a city called Aktau. It's a very small city, 200,000 population. And I was born there, and I lived there till I was 16 years old. And most of us who was born in the 90s, I was born in 1988. So growing up in the 90s, we had like a similar childhood in the region, because it's a time where the Soviet Union, broke out.
Yeah,
like,
when the USSR
split
was
over. Yeah, the USSR, basically USSR was over, and it was beginning of independent Kazakhstan, and it was economically it was hard for all the countries because they were switching all the financial system, economical system, and all of us kind of had like similar childhood, all the people from the region. But I'd say I had a happy childhood, living like next to the sea, 5 minutes to the beach. We didn't have much, but I can tell I had a great childhood. And when I was 16, I already graduated from the high school because usually we start school at 7, but I went when I was at 6 years old. Then I skipped 1 year and finished when I was 16. And because my father at the time, he had some business going on with China, so he told me there's an opportunity to go to China to get a higher degree. So I just, because I was always like into Eastern culture, like I was reading a lot about Japan, about China, so I thought it's a great opportunity. And when I was 16, I moved to Beijing. Started my adult life abroad.
This is at like 16, 17?
Yeah, I was 16 years old, and it was 2005.
Okay.
2005. Yeah, for first 2 years, I studied Chinese. Then got my bachelor degree in international trade and business. Got the scholarship from the Beijing government to get the master degree. And then couple more years, got my master degree. And you know, when you graduate from university, you kind of you never know what you want to do. But at the time, because my girlfriend still was studying in the university, and I wanted to stay in Beijing, so I was looking for the job in Beijing, and I got into like oil industry. I got into oil company, Chinese oil companies that was working with Kazakhstan. So basically my work was kind of like international project specialist, helping them like establish themselves in the Kazakhstan market. So
more business development side. And
yeah. So more like day-to-day things, business side of things, and was good salary, obviously, being oil company, but it was a job that I didn't really enjoy because when I was in Beijing, it was kind of like 9 to 5 office, Monday to Friday. And the business trip was to the cities like Kazakh, which is like not the nicest city in Kazakhstan, and you usually go to the oil fields and stuff like that. So I didn't really enjoy my job. And actually, like rewinding and going back, in 2011 was the first time when I came to Thailand. I was still studying in university, saved some money. I always had some part-time jobs as a translator. So saved some money and went to Thailand with intention to train. But me and my buddy went to Bangkok first, visit temples, stuff like that. And our friends were in Pattaya. So we said, okay, the weather in Phuket is not good yet. So let's go to Pattaya for a couple of days and then we'll go to Phuket to train. Ended up staying in Pattaya for the whole time, for 2 weeks.
We've all had those trips in Asia where you get stuck like... you know, you're traveling some country and you get lost in one city and you never see anything else.
Yeah. How old I was? Maybe like 22, 23 years old. Yeah. First time in Thailand, you go to walking street, you're like, wow. And you kind of go crazy a bit for a couple of weeks. But then like I still had this intention to train in Thailand because I was doing BJJ at the time. I started in like 2008 in Beijing. And because we had like common friends, our coach Von Anderson and then NDP, and then there was connection with Thailand at the time too, because guys like Ole Larsson, Ray Elby, they were like training and coaching here. So I kind of like followed them too and was looking for what they're doing, and that's how I found out about Tiger Muay Thai. So I had this plan to go and train in Thailand. So next year, I actually ended up coming to Phuket, coming to Tiger, training there. Absolutely loved it, loved the atmosphere. And it kind of became every year I kind of start coming back, you know.
When you're coming kind of still when Tiger was quite fresh, I mean, this is when the Tiger tryouts were starting around 2012, 2013 time.
Yeah.
When you were first coming to Tiger, like, are there still people there today that were there when you first started going? I mean, besides, well, those guys like George, they've obviously moved up here, but they would have been they would have been down there around that time as well.
Yeah, like 2012, I'd say, like most of the like Thai coaches, there's like a group of Thai coaches that's still from that time. Maybe just them, you know, because since that time I've seen like coaches change, owners change, you know, they completely like the whole gym changed, you know, since that time. And so coming back to my story, 2014, I had my first holidays. I was working in the old company and was Chinese New Year, and I decided to just come back to Thailand again with my girlfriend at the time, and now my wife, and kind of show her Phuket, Thailand, and also train. And she loved it so much, and me coming back was probably my first time in Thailand. And the first time I started having this thought, like, why not live in a place like this, you know? I enjoy coming here so much, and why not? So it was the first thought that came to my mind, and her too. And when I came, at the time there was a grappling and BJJ competition. Phuket top team was organizing it, Olavo. It was Kata Beach something, BJJ Open, and I signed up for it. Ended up like winning no gi division, got the second place in gi. And then one of the guys I rolled with at the competition came up to me. We started talking, and he was actually working in Tiger Muay Thai. So he came up to me just asking for the footage of our match. And then he said that he's working at Tiger, and I told him my story, that I live in China. And then he just brought up that Tiger actually looking to expand to Chinese market. So I grabbed his contact, went back to Beijing, to the jobs that I didn't really love, and then just came up with the idea, just why not try, and messaged the guy and offered him like my service, and he said just okay, come for 1 month tryout period, and then we'll see what's gonna happen next. So ended up quitting the job in the oil company, and then came to Tiger for 1 month tryout,
and taking, I mean, obviously taking a major pay cut as well, because everybody knows living in Thailand, especially if you're making money in Thailand, it's not easy, and obviously leaving oil and gas.
Yeah.
So your roles and responsibility with that type of job, was it purely like business development between Tiger and China and trying to bring the Chinese in?
With Tiger?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they basically like didn't know where to start. They just wanted more Chinese clients because they've seen there are more Chinese tourists coming to Phuket, and they just wanted to use it as opportunity to expand. And I actually ended up doing more than they expected. Will Elliott was a director at the time. He gave me the opportunity. And we ended up signing the deal with Kunlun Fight, partnership deal. Then the MFT, this Chinese group, they were coming before I came to Tiger. But after I came, and then we started to do like social media in Chinese, started to bring the Tiger's name up in China, spreading it, inviting like Chinese fighter to come to train in Tiger. And the group was like kind of like 20 people at the time. 6 months after I came, it was like already like 100, 120 people. And I'm not saying it's just me. Obviously, everyone worked together, but that's how like really Tiger brought themselves for the like Chinese market, Chinese scene. And now like in China, everyone involved in martial arts, you know, like Tiger as a brand. The fighters come to prepare, the tourists come just to
so
get in shape.
It wasn't this massive business proposal plan. It was more of a, hey, let's try to bring Chinese fighters in. Let's see where you start. And then that kind of just grew step by step. At a certain point, did you essentially you're kind of bringing the fighters, you know, from China into Tiger. You have that collaboration between these two organizations. At which point were you ever managing fighters and possibly bringing them now from Tiger back to China into promotions and fight cards?
Because I had all this connection in the martial arts scene in China, and I knew all the people already. And then me working at Tiger, you know, it kind of came naturally because I never had a goal to become a manager. It was just my Chinese friends who started being involved with promotions and stuff. At the time, like, there was a lot of combat events in China. And they were just asking, oh, you work at the gym, you have fighters there, you have fighters for this weight class. And so obviously fighters in Tiger were looking for the fights. So I was became like this middleman, start sending fighters to China, learning on the go. But then it was not enough for me just being a middleman, you know. I wanted to be involved more in fighters' career, and that's how I started like to manage guys at the time. It was like probably around 2000, end of 2014, 2015.
And especially for someone like yourself at that stage, your competitive advantage is the language.
Yeah, obviously.
And obviously, like you have a Chinese fighter. Maybe would they ever be coming over to Thailand for fights, or would they be going international?
Chinese fighters?
Chinese fighters. Or was it pure? Because everyone knows that, like, back in the day, like, you got guys like, if you're familiar with, like, Eddie Farrell and a lot of the Thai fighter or people that were doing Muay Thai in Thailand, there's better money in China for those events than doing it here. So they would go over there. At which point was that, like, you know, the milestone, you know, of your career when maybe you've connected with a fighter and started to actually manage them besides just the connection? Maybe you're negotiating contracts, you're helping with sponsorships. At which point did that happen?
I mean, it kind of grew slowly, step by step. Obviously, like, the guys, like, I knew guys like Petr, he was coming to Tiger since 2014. Arman Tsarukyan, he was coming to Tiger since 2014. At the time, Arman was amateur. Petr had one pro fight. And, like, seeing them grow and helping fighters at the gym with fight opportunities, not only in China, abroad too. Also helping fighters like from Kazakhstan fight outside, helping Chinese fighter maybe fight outside. But because usually at the time, Chinese market was booming. There was event every week. So it was a good platform for me to gain this experience, to gain these connections. And I cannot say like the big milestone, because when I switched, when there was less events in China and the visa started to become a problem, I started to switch more on the other markets. And at the time, I met my current partner, Daniel Rubinstein, and we decided to work together to try and kind of help these Russian fighters, Kazakh fighters from this region, to help them to go to the Western market, get them signed to UFC, other organizations. So when Petr became free agent, he was the first guy we signed together to UFC, and he was the guy who later went on to become a champion. So this was one of the milestones, obviously.
This is probably around 2014-15, right?
No. It was 2018 when he got signed to UFC. And 2 years later, he became like a champion. Okay,
because the reason I became exposed to Petr Yan is because I think it was his first fight in UFC. He was fighting a Japanese guy.
Yeah, in Singapore.
Now, the only reason it wasn't just because of the guys at Tiger. Obviously, I'm seeing the more of the social media content here. It's actually because my friend is the striking coach of that guy at Team Alpha Male.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm like, okay, I was getting behind Petr Yan during his first fight way before anything, and he was getting behind that guy. And it was kind of just like the timing was funny. And then the next thing I knew, like, holy shit, Petr Yan has just exploded. Like, so when you made that connection with Petr Yan and bring him to the UFC, Now, did you have any other connections to the UFC at this point? Were you bringing other fighters in? Was there something before that?
Yeah, I actually had a connection to UFC before. I had a Chinese guy that I managed. He was fighting in UFC, Ning Guangyo. He won the Ultimate Fighter China, and I was managing him at the time. But it wasn't like, it was just one guy in UFC. And UFC wasn't expanding at the time to the Russian market and stuff like that. And 2018 was good timing because they opened the UFC Russia office. They started to make events in Russia. So at the time, we managed like to sign a lot of guys to UFC who are obviously succeeding and fighting there till now.
Yeah, and there's a lot expanding now. I mean, well, obviously, I mean, like I lived in China. I see what's going on every day, not just from the news, but actually from friends in Shenzhen, and the cities are locked down. And we know the UFC is talking about, I think Shanghai has like a UFC Apex. Are you involved in a little bit of that as well because of how early you've been with these fighters?
I'm not involved with like a UFC PI and stuff because, I'm kind of still, I think it's going to be like more like a conflict of interest, because if I'm involved with PI, I cannot really like manage guys. So I'm kind of try to stay on the managed side of things. But what I do with UFC now is they usually use me when I'm there in Vegas or in the international events. They use me as a translator for Russian and Chinese fighters. Yep. That's how some of people know me, because they see me on TV, so they think I'm like a translator for UFC. But I just help them, but it's not my like main job.
Now, as a manager, and you're living in this, the UFC management world, there are characters in it. We got Ali, we got Eric. Captain Eric, that they're more popular. Tim Simpson, I mean, he's had a hell of a year too, right? Do you have close relationships with those managers? Do you guys kind of have your own inner circle as well?
I mean, we all know each other. I cannot say that I'm close with all these guys. Of course, managers from the like Kazakhstan, Russian scene, I'm more closer to them. And it depends, Of course, there's competitions, but there's stuff that we can work out together too. And I believe there is market for everyone, and everyone bring different values to the fighters. Obviously, me working with Russian-speaking fighters, Chinese-speaking fighters, for them having a manager who speaks their own language is more beneficial. And there's like Brazilian managers, Japanese managers.
Exactly.
There's market for everyone.
And obviously now your market, it's you've kind of come across these massive stars. Did that just happen naturally, or was there a little bit of luck that because you're at Tiger and you're able to come across Petr Yan and Rafael Fiziev, and now you have Rakhmonov coming up as well? Did you find them at a very early age? I mean, we obviously talked about Petr Yan, but like Fiziev, he's been at Tiger, since probably 2012, 13, 14-ish, let's say. Did you kind of plant those seeds so early, or did you know they were going to be stars when you came across them?
With most of the guys, I became friend first, and then with most of them, it became like a parallel. They were growing as an athletes, I were growing as a manager, and then at one point of their career, we started to working together. And there are guys that are brought up from the beginning, like there are guys like Grigory Popov. When I started to work with him, he had like 3 MMA fights. And then I was managing him since that time till he got signed to UFC. It didn't really work out well in UFC for him because he was older at the time already. But still, it's something that I'm proud of too, because I was managing him since the beginning of his career. With other guys, like Petr started with working with me when he was already UFC ready. But the reason he started to work with me because he knew me as a friend, as a good human being. We had already built a relationship, so he decided to trust me, even though at the time I didn't had any like UFC fighters yet. But he decided to trust me, and he was confident in me, and that's how it worked out. And with other guys too, a lot of guys gave me credit even before like I achieved something, and me and Danny as partners achieved something together. It's only because they knew me on a personal level. That's why.
And that's kind of my thought as well. Like I went back and watching yourself come up and the fighters. It's like kind of you guys grew together organically. It wasn't like they were already superstars and had to find someone. And so I thought that was quite interesting. And the fact that you kind of all had that Thailand connection as well. Did you have a mentor to become that MMA manager? And kind of the question is more like, okay, yeah, you're working with Chinese organizations in Thailand. The contracts, they're probably much more simplified in terms of like the legal standpoint. But those days when you have a UFC contract with a fighter like, Petr Yan, and you sit down with someone without like, let's call it that legal experience, did you have to turn to a mentor? Were you just YouTubing it? How did you approach that process?
Obviously, I have a great partner in Daniel. And I learned a lot from him still to this day. And he was working with UFC already, him being from United States, him living in Vegas, having this experience. Of course, I learned from him. And he didn't have any like fighters from our region. And me bringing them to his company. And he also, I believe, gained a lot from this because he got a first champion for his company in Petr Yan, and all of the top guys, most of the top guys from like Ruby Sports Entertainment are the guys like from our region. We have, I have personally managed 6 guys who are in top 15 in UFC now, 3 lightweights who are in top 15, bantamweight, featherweight, welterweight, so these divisions. And I believe we have a potential to have even like 4 champions in different divisions. We have Movsar Evloev, who is top 10 in featherweight division. We have Rafael Fiziev, Arman Tsarukyan, Damir Ismagulov, all in top 15. We have Shavkat Rakhmonov, who is top 10 in welterweight division. So obviously, I believe Petr Yan, he's still the best in the world. So all these guys have a potential to become champions,
When you have multiple people that you're managing in a division, is there that conversation? What happens if these guys have to meet?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good problem to have also. But I hope this day, like, if they have to fight, the fight's going to mean something. Either it's like a number 1 contender fight or it's like a title shot. So, of course, I'm not going to stand in their way. But early in their career, I prefer to avoid them fighting. And guys like Arman and Rafael, they know each other. They train together. So there's another,
Yeah, I guess it's similar with Fiziev and Riddell when they had to meet up. And what obviously you would know much more on the backstory behind that. But what I kind of heard, Phuket's small. We hear a lot of things. It was just more or less no one wanted to fight either of them.
Yeah.
And they kind of were at that position, in that top 10, and they kind of were like, okay, I guess we just have to fight each other. Is that the story behind that?
Yeah. Like usually UFC, when they want to make some fight happen, they put you in circumstances that you're going to have to agree to that fight. And we knew that fight was on a radar, and then it was offered to Bred first, and Bred called to Rafa, and they kind of talked through it and agreed to fight, because it depends on your perception. Some fighters look at it as just a sport, as a competition. They don't take it personal. Then other fighters, they take fighting very personal, and I don't blame them, because you get in there with the other man and getting punched in the face. So I don't blame them if they take it personal. But Rafa and Bred, they were professionals, and it went Rafa's way. But Bred, I believe, is still.
I mean, these are both striking coaches from Tiger, right?
Yeah.
And I think Brad has a fight coming up in Madison Square Garden on the Zhang Weili card as well. Yeah. I hope he takes that. I think he's not ranked, but he's a top 10, I believe. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, Brad is always entertaining to watch his 100%. Fights, and he have a fun, friendly style, and I believe he can still come back to top 15, and he's still a lot of like big fights in the future.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. On a side note, we have Fiziev coming up. There's a lot of word going around that he's probably getting lined up with Justin Gaethje. Obviously, you know what's going on behind the scenes. Is there anything you can share on that, or is it still, you know, things are being worked out?
I mean, obviously, this is a fight that we want. I know that UFC also want to make this fight. Justin have different priorities, but we'll see. Usually, when Dana want to make a fight, you know, it happens. So right now it's still early because they both will be healthy to compete in December, January. So still early, you know, to negotiate about this fight.
Okay, so Fruiting Body Podcast, we're doing something different now. Every episode we film, we're going to cut it into 2 parts, airing on Tuesday at 6 p.m. and Thursday at 6 p.m. So this is part 1. Part 2 of the Fruiting Body Podcast on Thursday at 6 p.m.